Welcome to our convo with Joseph Barbaccia. And I think everybody knows his work, and it's something pretty special in my personal opinion. And I'm absolutely entranced with it. I first found your work, Joseph, probably 7 or 8 years ago. I became aware of it, and I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. Yeah. I first became aware of your work about 7 or 8 years ago and was completely entranced with the portraits and everything. Most people come to polymer clay through the hobby route and hobby crafter route, but you came to this through the fine art route. Tell us about that. How did you get started? Okay, you told me how you got started doing art. You tell that story.
Okay.
I think that's great.
Okay, I got started with art through love, pure, unadulterated love, and it was for a woman. And that woman was Miss Phillips. Now we called unmarried women then Miss, so I still call her Miss. And she was my second grade teacher. And she enjoyed having her class draw or paint or create things. And it was really something. So of course, since I was in love with her, I wanted to impress her. I wanted to show her, express my love. And I drew and painted, and I got not really the adulation necessarily, but I got the affection back. You're doing such a great job, Joe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what happened after a while was that, I'd take these drawings or whatever home, and my parents would start saying the same thing, or relatives would start saying the same thing. So I drew. And then pass over this really quickly. I was bullied in my neighborhood as a young kid. And so I would go inside, and what did I do? I drew, or I painted. And in high school, that was my major, that I was going to Tyler School of Fine Arts. I grew up near Philadelphia, and Tyler was part of Temple University. And so I attended Tyler on a scholarship with a good friend of mine, and spent 2 years there really finding out everything that I didn't know about art, because I came from a real rural area, and I was the artist in high school. And all of a sudden I was thrown into college with a lot of these very smart, wealthy kids who had, parents who took them to shows and galleries and museums, and I never had that opportunity. So I spent 2 years there, and I finally said, I can be an artist on my own.
Oh boy,
what a mistake. I can do this on my own. So I did that for a year, and I, painted and I drew, but again, I didn't have the network. I didn't understand what I had to do. One of the things that I think art schools and colleges, universities are doing more now, particularly places like Yale, are teaching classes where they tell you about the art world. They tell you about the business of art, how to network, and well, now, how to set up a website, and et cetera, et cetera. So they didn't do that then. I was in school in 70 to 72 at Tyler. I did end up going to other schools for my education, but they weren't, and taking art classes, art education classes, but they weren't primarily art schools. So the short answer was, it was love that got me started into art.
Wonderful. So have you worked as an artist through most of your life?
Yes, but not as what we call a fine artist now.
Okay.
I worked for 20 some years as an information designer.
What
And
is that?
what an information designer does is they work with scientists, with engineers, with politicians in some cases. I worked for different government agencies. I didn't work for the government agencies, I worked with them, consultants wise. And my job was to take the ideas, the concepts, the proposals that these scientists or doctors or military men had, and put an image to them so that they were easy to understand through an image. And the images could take any direction, whatever was needed for that particular.
So would that be similar?
Project.
So how does that differ from illustration?
Illustration is part of it. But it's also graphics. It deals a lot with numbers, graphs, animation is part of it too. So I did a lot of animation there. So that's what I did my whole life. Now, along with that, when I came home at night, now I had also 3 daughters, but when I came home at night and decided that, I wanted to work, I had a 2-car garage as my studio. And that's when if you look at my website at all the previous work, that's when I did that. And that was up to about, I'd say 7 years ago.
Right.
And it was 4 years ago when I retired. I'm 70 years old. And it was 4 years ago when I retired and moved to a much smaller, the downsize, we downsized. And I have a much smaller studio. So what I do is I question myself, well, I can't work, on these larger sculptures anymore. I don't have my, tabletop tools or large space that I could really dirty with any type of material. What am I going to do? How am I going to express myself in a way that will be as flexible as I had before, when I could use almost any material I wanted to, because I had the space and the tools to use that sort of stuff.
I want to take some time right now, and I want to go back and I want to go over some of your work, because I think that this is going to make a lot more sense to people when they've seen your work. I think that I'm just going to quickly go through a little bit here. And let me do this, screen share. One of the most recent ones that you came out with was this one.
Yeah, that's the pinch and tear. That's the pinch and tear. I should have, I don't know whether you have it with you, a close-up to get a better feel of what that pinch and tear is.
I did. I didn't put it in here. But,
okay.
But yeah, so
I can show them with the piece I'm working on now.
Okay, well, how about we do that in just a second? I just want to go over just real quickly. And that's good to point out that this is also the pinch and tear.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And these are fairly recent. These are this year, right?
Correct. That's another pinch and tear.
And I love this one because we've all seen that.
Yes.
You look at that and it's so, we've all been there and we've all seen that exact scene. And for some reason, the carpet does exactly that same thing. I don't know. That's fascinating to me. That it does. I don't know. They always look like that. I love this. But this isn't the pinch and tear, is it?
No, that is not
different. This is rolling.
Yeah, that harkens back to using the spaghetti the spaghetti cutter for the pasta machine. And then I'll cut those smaller sizes, maybe about 3/4 of an inch, a half inch, and then lay them in.
Okay.
This was from a photograph I took off the ferry.
Right.
In fact, that's what it's called. Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, we've all seen that as well. And an incredible way with light. All right, this one's very different. Tell me about that.
Well, one of the things, let me preface by saying that recently I won a fellowship grant from the Delaware Division of the Arts.
Mhm.
And part of that grant, I had to write an artist statement. And one of the things that is required if you win that grant is a solo show and to develop your work in a certain direction.
Mhm.
So what I had told them specifically with this is that I was going to move my work more into a impressionist and an expressionist mode. And this piece was more impressionist, I guess you could say, where I took the pieces of clay and actually, let's see, I think the technical term is smushed. I smushed them
Yes.
in a particular direction. So that was the start of moving away from just the strands, just
Right.
using the strands.
Right. And the strands, let's skip ahead here. This is an example of the strands.
Not all.
No?
If you get kind of close, and I have one here I can show everybody, but it's a combination of both strands and then cut pieces.
Gotcha.
So the background in particular is more like a mosaic. There's straight cuts.
Right.
And the face of the hair is strands. Mm-hmm. And I think the beard is kind of strandy.
Yeah, that works.
And the rest are cut shapes as well, but not linear cut. You know, they're cut to the shape of the form.
All right, now that I'm seeing that. So this is the same, you've got strands here, and then the background is cut.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. So this is more of a mosaic style, but this is all done raw, correct? Do you bake halfway through or anything like that?
On that one, no, it was all done raw. Some of the larger ones I have to bake halfway through and then fit them together.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like the self-portrait was fit together.
Okay.
That one. That one too. Both of those self-portraits.
Okay. Wanted to go back here, and what was the thought process behind these stained glass pieces?
What I wanted to do was to play with the idea of light, and I had some transparent clay, so I ran it through the pasta machine, and I started getting combinations of these the transparent clay and these filaments sort of the opaque clay. And the first thing that came to my mind was stained glass. And I said, I can do this. So I put together a couple of images, and there was like a separate image of the green leaves and a separate image of the wisteria. And I put together those, and this was in 4 pieces. I had to piece this together. This is a larger piece. It hangs, Candace, my wife, would not let me sell this one. And so this
I can imagine.
this one hangs in our living area.
Good.
So, and then I made 4 smaller ones on these stands because I made them stands because they make them at least a little bit easier to place. They don't have to be hanging in the window. They could be in front of the window or in front of the light, whatever. It gives it more flexibility of where.
That's a really good strategy, because I noticed that's something that I thought about. I also like to work with translucent, and one of the difficulties is placing it in a way that you're going to get the light through it. So that's a really good solution.
Yeah, and I did 4 of these, and these were snapped up. I'm sorry, I did 4. Well, maybe I did 3 because they were snapped up by my daughters.
Okay,
Sometimes that happens.
that happens, yeah. Okay, I'm going to come back to this, but I wanted, I will come back to that because I want to talk about the rest of it. But you said you wanted to show us some of what you're doing. Do you have it handy where you can show us?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that'd be
I'm
great.
going to put some lights down onto the piece, and perhaps we can see the whole table.
Okay.
And this piece is from a photo that I took. Let's see. I can set up the camera. I apologize if it's dancing around for a second. And it's going to be upside down to everybody right now. There we go. And let's see. Okay, I put these pieces of wax paper over top of it to keep hairs and dust and little other pieces of clay off of the piece as I'm working on different sections. But if I get close here, you can see
Oh, yeah.
how the pieces are. Whoops.
So the background is the tear, the pinch and tear.
Well, so are most of the, well, the leaves are too.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see the leaves are, and the bark on the larger sections, if you can see that. I don't know. Let's see if I can get some light on that. And this little thing has a focus. It's, yeah, you can kind of see the bark
Yeah,
is
we can see it.
torn as well. The branches I don't tear as well. Sometimes they're rolled a little bit, but I try to make them as I don't know, as misshapen as I possibly can, but still maintain the visual of what they are.
Right, right.
So basically what I do, if I go back out again and then refocus, there we go. Basically what I do is I'll take the photograph, I'll run it through Photoshop. I use Photoshop. I'll reduce the amount of colors that I use for the image. So I'll reduce, say, the image down to, I don't know, maybe 20 colors. And sometimes I'll mix those colors before I start. Sometimes as I'm working, I want a different color or want to add a color to it. And then I'll, mix a new color. In this case, so some of the pieces will have 30 colors to them, 30 different colors. Mixing colors is a pain in the ass. I mean, I like the color once I finally get it, but I've only been doing polymer clay for like 7 years, maybe 8. So I'm not as familiar as I could be, as I hope to be in the future, particularly with saying, oh, if I'm mixing that particular blue with, that particular yellow, I know basically what kind of green I'm going to get. So I'm not quite there yet. Right. And that's why it's a pain in the ass. But I think I do okay, and it takes me longer than I want to do it. It takes me longer to mix than I want it to take. Now,
what brand of clay do you use mainly?
I use Primo.
Okay.
And I get different. One of the pleasures about being in this organization and other organizations, one of the big values of being with these organizations is the exchange of information. It's almost like these pieces are all collaborative pieces. The people the people that I've met, the people that I've talked to in these meetings and Zooms, have been so helpful to me. I could never have done these pieces in the time that I have done them without the help of people that I've met online.
Right.
Excuse me. So what I'll do with the color after it's mixed is I'll thin it out. I think I use a number 4 for this piece. And I'll just do this. I'll just pinch it. Ooh, let me get under here. I'll just pinch it and tear it. And then I have my size. Now, sometimes I got to trim again before I put it in, but that's it. Now, some people have called this kind of a mosaic. Okay, I know you want to see my face now. Some people have kind of called this a mosaic type method of working with these, but I tend to shy away from that.
Right.
Only because what I can also do with this method, when I put it this way, when I think of mosaics, I think of one level. But what I can also do with this method is build. So when I'm working with the leaves on with the needles on these pine trees, even though they won't be, pointy and thin like the needles, I can still build, not too much. I don't want it to be a sculpture, but I can still build with lighter greens. I think I have an example of to give it more of a bas relief type.
Right. Oh, yeah, you can clearly see it there. Yes. And I love that you've added other colors in there. I see blues and reds.
Oh, yes. In the bark, I don't think I'm finished with that idea as yet. I think I have a little further to go. But I've always admired Monet's work, particularly his poplar, I think it's poplars, series of like there are 4 or 5 poplars. Anyway, he just adds these gorgeous colors to them. And I didn't want to do exactly like that, but I wanted that feel of just a bit of color in those, dark grays to help pull them along.
Right. It breaks up the monotony. It gives it dimension.
Absolutely.
It gives it visual dimension. Perfect.
Oh.
Your camera. Yeah, the camera's trying to catch up. There you go. Okay. So question for you. Do you experience resistance when you tell people that you're working with polymer? Because we all know that polymer has kind of many people are afraid that polymer clay is seen as sort of the bastard stepchild of the art world, and that it doesn't have any respect as a medium, et cetera. I'm sure you've heard that story. So do you experience any of that? And if so, how do you deal with it? Or do you not deal with it?
Well, I'm going to be doing what I'm doing, whether I hear about that or not, for one. Normally, if people are aware of polymer clay, when they see my work, this is the feedback that I get, they are more curious about perhaps the use of the material in this way than the idea of using it for art or fine art. Maybe I'm not explaining it well, but it's normally that's instead of saying, gee, I like the colors in that, or you really crop that nicely, and gee, it makes me think of such and such. I'll get, that's polymer clay.
Yeah.
That type of reaction,
right.
Which in a way is to my advantage, because that would bring people in to the piece. In any way that you bring a person into the piece, I think is a positive thing, as long as there's something coming back out, as long as the piece is saying something, is communicating, is in with the collaboration, the piece and the viewer collaboration. As long as that happens, I think no matter how you attract a person to it, you know, it can be a positive thing in the interaction.
Good. I'm going to actually just a second. I'm gonna screen share again. At least I thought I was. Hold on. Why is the technology always so much fun? It never fails. There we go. So the question I have, the next question I have is, why portraits? Why? I know you've done a lot of self-portraits, and I've looked over the course of your work, you've done a lot of them, of self-portraits. Why self-portraits first off, and why portraits?
I'll tell you why, and I know it right away, and it goes back to what I used to do for a living, my information design. I came from a very small high school, very small town. Never considered myself very intelligent, and I was a shy kid as well. When I started working, there was a lot of collaboration that I had to do with these scientists and engineers, and I was flabbergasted. I've never met people so erudite, so smart, so understanding, so deep. And my admiration for that ability to communicate difficult information skyrocketed. So that when I do portraits now, they're normally, particularly later, particularly this or last month, which was National Women's Month, I pick people out who I admire for all sorts of reasons: their tenacity, their accomplishments, their erudition, a whole bunch of things. So I think that a lot of that, at least in the type of material that I use, I think that the easiest part to exemplify that intelligence or that character in people with the materials that I use is through the face.
Right.
Especially because I'm limited at the moment in size by the size oven I have and the pieces of glass. Now I can get bigger pieces of glass and I can get a bigger oven, but that may have to be for the next grant that happens. So that's why I do that's why I do faces a lot. It's to express. Now this one's a little more political, obviously.
Right. I was going to ask you that, because it's impossible to look at your portraits without noticing a certain political direction, shall I say?
Yeah. I'm saying something about our president right here, and it's almost a caricature because his left eye is lower and his left ear is lower than his right eye and ear. But in this particular one, I've accentuated it.
Interesting, because it's something I never even noticed about him. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so this is really character. Of course, that's even more of a caricature.
I'm sorry, but I think that is absolutely hilarious. And the way that you chose to use cracked, fractured sloppiness is so, I mean, there have been so many caricatures of him that, I mean, leaving politics aside, there have been so many caricatures of him, and this is just perfect. It really is.
Yeah, I think that if you're putting yourself up politically, if you're going to put yourself in that position politically or entertainment wise, or just about anything, you're going to become a target. And I think that you take those blows.
You do.
Right. And the more that you can not ignore them, but even, bend with the wind of those blows, the more you'll succeed at what you do at that level.
Good.
And that's something completely different.
This is something completely different. I'm going to come back to this because I actually want to come back to this. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I believe, we'll do this one. I wanted to talk a little bit now about the history and the development of art. And one thing I think is utterly fascinating, and I'm just going to zoom through these real quick, but what I think is utterly fascinating, when we're beginning on our art journey, it is really difficult to see where we're going to go. But when you're looking at a mature artist, and I'm using the term mature, but I hope you won't mind, when you've been, when you have a body of work and you can look back over it, you have the advantage of being able to look retrospectively and see the evolution. And I thought this was utterly fascinating to look at your current work and then zoom through this. I'll just zoom through these real quick and see commonalities through here. And this is something from 1973. And what struck me is that's not the way clouds work, but that's the way you saw clouds. And you would have been quite young at that point, right? This is during those art school years.
Yeah, I think I was 21.
Right. So still yet very, very young, but you chose to see the puffy clouds as lots and lots and lots of individual pieces. And drawings, lots and lots, realistic, not much distortion there, very realistic, with lots and lots and lots of individual pieces.
Right. Very similar to that cross hatching.
Yes.
has echoed
Yes.
through the years in different ways. And I don't know, do you have the photo of Wham Bam?
No, I did not grab that one.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, I want to show you how the echo of the cross hatching has come through to the piece I
We'll get there and we'll do that in just a second.
Yep.
I'm going to zoom through these real quick. Again, this is 1982, little bits and pieces, little pieces. 82 as well. There is, that looks just like your current work. There are strands and there are pieces. And here is people you admire. This is the same thing that has happened over and over again. And this kills me. We've got lots and lots of individual little pieces, and we have humor. And I see humor all through your work as well. And again, the cross hatching and another self-portrait.
Yeah, that's just different size beads.
Yes, but again, pieces.
Yep, individual
Pieces. And then I noticed that you went through a series in the early 2000s along in there where you were doing thread, wrapping things in thread. And I saw this, and then I saw this. And again, there's a statement here. And you've got thread once again. And I just thought that was utterly fascinating, because when you look at your current work and you look at the current things, you see lots and lots and lots of little pieces and threads that compose the whole. So I don't know if you saw that, but I did. So I just thought it was, did you have anything to say about that?
Well, different things at different times. The wrapping was, I think, an expression of constraints. At the time on what I was doing with my art. Also, that series that the cat was in was a series of puns, well, sort of, or sayings, because that cat, the title of that cat was Scaredy Cat, and it had eggshells that it was walking on. So there's some pun in that, some fun in that piece, as well as the idea of wrapping and constraints. Yes, as a matter of fact, and let me show you this piece here. And I think I had it up on the site as show and tell. I'll just set this down here.
Yeah, I debated about, I almost included it, and I wish I had the original from Wham Bam. Mhm.
So that's it may be backwards to everybody else right there, but
No, it's working. It's fine.
it's okay.
Mhm.
So that's Wham Bam. This was taken from this drawing,
Right.
which became an oil painting. This was back in '82. So I stole that from me and did let's see if I can get a better shot here. Did the little strings, but a little bit differently, but used the same color and the same model, same person.
Right. Interesting. Fascinating.
So even now, I move back to things that I've done before and will revisit them, but with a different material. And that's, I'm sorry, that's standard artsy fartsy stuff to revisit old images and ideas.
Right, right. All right, one more little series of screen share. I wanted to talk about the sculptures. This one in particular, cross-hatching, individual pieces, and this is a 3D sculpture. So what's the story of this one?
You know, I don't know if that one has a story. This was the only impetus I had initially for this was I wanted to do something in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some sketches, some quick sketches, particularly for doing something in 3D. And that's what, and utilizing, of course, polymer clay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what this is. I mean, there's a base of aluminum foil inside the pea-shaped or the bean-shaped pink form.
Right.
And, you know, you could recognize the blends right away. This is my second try. The first try of this, nobody's going to see that. That really didn't work at all. But yeah, because I didn't know anything about Skinner blends. I had no idea what I was doing. Right. And in fact, I wanted the body to be a Skinner blend, but it just wasn't working for me. I imagine people who are watching now, they have, experience with Skinner blends, and they would know how long it took them to get them right. But it took me a while to even get it so that this is similar to a Skinner blend, the quills. Mm-hmm. But it was just a shape. This is kind of abstract. That again is another abstract shape. This was a preliminary piece that I am writing a proposal for a grant for. But this is a preliminary piece. What I plan on doing is taking Chinese calligraphy, calligraphy, and sort of bringing it into 3 dimensions, and then decorating it in a way that I think the way that Chinese decoration makes me feel.
Go through all this here. Sorry, finger slipped. But I wanted to point out that this is 88, and you can't really escape from yourself. Isn't that funny? How it's the same, very similar concept. It's just very interesting evolution.
Oh, that's this knot right there. I did a series of actual sailor's knots. And this is an actual sailor's knot, although it's probably about 4 feet high, I think.
Oh, wow.
And it's carved polystyrene and sequins, finished with sequins.
Right. And so working large like that wasn't possible for where you are now. That's why you moved to polymer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And polymer, again, like I said before, it gives me the flexibility to do, the almost two-dimensional pieces or the dimensional mosaics. I guess somebody mentioned like that, or do a smaller sculpture with them. So
when you make your pieces, not your three-dimensional ones, those are obviously sculptural, but these paintings that you're doing now, what's the substrate? What's the base for them? Well,
I do them on glass.
Okay.
So, and then I'll pop them right into the oven. And then if they're too large and they require 2 pieces, then what I'll do is I'll sort of make a line on my reference material where the first one ended.
Okay.
And then I'll butt up that first piece on top of the glass for the second piece. And then if you can see where my fingers are gone up and down, that's where I'll start the second piece from that side on. So that no matter where the up and down is for the pieces that I tore off, it should fit well. It never has fit perfectly now, but it fits well enough to it doesn't show. And the more I do it, the less it shows. Just like anything else, you learn how to perfect some things.
Good. And so you bake. You bake it all in one, or like you said, in pieces if you have to. And then do you do any kind of painting or antiquing or any kind of surface treatments at all?
Oh, sometimes, I usually put these, when they're finished baking, I'll put them on like a dark foam core or a gator board sometimes.
Okay.
And other times I have put a fabric on top of the gator board or on top of the foam core.
Right.
So adhered that on there and then adhered the piece on top of that so that I get that texture or the color, next to the piece that enhances the overall presentation.
Okay, so you don't leave them on glass permanently.
Correct. Yeah, I only use glass to cook them up.
Okay. All right. So once they're baked, you just lift them from the glass. You just slide something behind and pop them off. I'm assuming. There you go. The spatula. Important. Very important polymer tool. Okay.
Yes, it is. I bought it at the polymer section at Michael's.
That's true. I like that. Okay, so what's next for you?
Well, a couple of things. One, the preparations and the writing up what I want to do with the Chinese calligraphy. There'll be sculptures. I have the solo show that I have to do in July. I have a group show at the Dover Biggs Museum. It's an American art museum. I have another group show that I'm doing in Rehoboth Beach, all that I'm preparing for this summer. I have 3 more, I have demos that I have to do. A couple of places down here wanted me to teach, but I have no idea how I would teach this. And I just have no idea, because I use the computer besides using, clay, besides
Right.
the baking and all that. So I told them that I would do a demo and give them an idea about my methods, and just like today, answer any questions. And then I'm planning for something, again, because I have a problem with size, I want something bigger. So I've been musing and musing and musing. And what I thought of was a single piece made up of separate shapes. And those separate shapes have a distinct relationship to each other on the wall, so that I can make small pieces that they'll fit in the oven, and then arrange them on the wall to form a larger piece. So, and also what I wanted to get away from, and it kind of shows a little bit on Wham Bam, and that is I wanted to get away from the square, a rectangle.
Right.
So those 2 things. And in the experiment with the single pieces forming a whole, I want to do something with polymer clay that a lot of miniaturists do with polymer clay. And that is when they're making frosting for cupcakes, things like that, they mix a lot of softener in with the polymer clay so that it is much more malleable. They can put it through a little squeezy thing to make I'm sure there's a name for that, and I forget what it is. What do you use to squeeze out frosting?
Pastry.
Piping, yes,
Piping,
exactly.
yes.
Thank you. So I wanted to make the clay that consistency, like the consistency of frosting, and then create this idea of a multi-pieced wall hanging. And so this is, I hesitate to show this, but I'm going to anyway. So what I've done was I've kind of, I don't know, played around with this shape. It's again, this is all tests to see how I can get this feel. And my next step will be the feel of impasto oils almost.
Right.
And then the next step will be to see how well I can blend those colors. I didn't try it on this test. Also, this might be like an Easter egg or something. I didn't like the colors of this particularly, but I was testing.
We'll have to talk about that, because I've been working on the same impasto thing, and it's tricky. It's tricky because they get sticky. They get a lot stickier than you want them to be.
Yes, I found that out, and it may cause one of the problems that I found with working with oils way back when, is that you have to wait some time, or in this case, you have to cook them, you have to bake them before you can work on top of them again.
Right.
But I also wanted the feel of, I haven't tested it yet, but after you do the impasto, maybe having a lighter, very transparent color with the clay on top of that to get a different type of color mix. Some
sort of a wash type experience.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious to see where you're going to go with that, because that's, possibilities.
Me too. I tried to put in about 6 hours in the studio. It doesn't always happen. Like yesterday, I went to, had to drive out to Annapolis, Maryland, which is close, which is about, I think about 50 miles away from where I live. So we stayed there overnight. Candace and I went to the show. So there goes my 6 hours, for the day.
Life gets in the way.
6 to 8 hours a day. That's my norm in the studio.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay, I'm gonna open this up for questions from our peeps. Kim has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm just because talking about time, how long does it take one of those portraits you've done to come together? I'm curious because it looks like a huge amount of work.
It is a lot of work. However, Kim, one of the advantages of this pinch and tear is that to actually lay the clay doesn't take long at all. Mixing the clay, like I said before, is pain, and that takes longer to get the exact colors that I need for a good blending and things like that. I think Katanji took me 2 weeks of 6 to 8 hours a day. I don't count the hours or anything like that. I would have to blow my brains out. I'm not a numbers person or anything like that. Katanji also, I just had my first sale on Saatchi. I don't know if anybody puts any of their work on Saatchi art, but I just had my first sale and that's going out tomorrow.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really happy with that. Well, I've been on there, it takes a while. It takes a while to sell anything on there. It took me about a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Joan. You're on mute.
Okay. I was wondering, when you were doing the larger pieces on glass, and you said you did them in sections with the picture behind them, do you work on a number of them simultaneously, or do you do one, cook it, and then do the other one?
That's how I work. I'll do one, cook that part, then use that cooked part to line up the new clay against the edge of that cooked part. And then I'll finish up the image. Usually they're in 2 pieces. Does that make sense? Am I explaining it right and answering your question?
Yeah, I understand it. You're actually using the one cooked piece as a template for the next piece that's going to butt up against it.
Exactly, yeah, they go right, like if they're like this or something, I could go like that with the new clay. Now, I've also found that because you do have the shrinkage, in putting them together, sometimes I have to do a little trimming so that the pieces that have shrunk don't have holes in them. Because I thought, well, I could always fill them with clay because I have the colors, but then that's not true. Then it's not hard because I can't bake them again because my oven is too small. Right. So it's a catch-22 situation until I get a larger oven. But then you know what's going to happen, Joan, is I want bigger piece. Exactly.
Exactly. Good. Thank you. Tom.
Yes, I was wondering if on this latest work you're working on, if maybe some of the colored liquid polymers might work for your blending, in that you can get them out to the consistency of toothpaste so that you can work it, and might be able to use something like that.
Yeah, that's like coming, I see what you're saying. That's kind of coming from a different direction, coming from a loose direction to a more hard direction, rather than what I'm doing is coming from a hard direction, adding the looseness to it, and then, getting that consistency. And I'll tell you why I hadn't tried that. It's because I've never experimented with the liquid polymer clay. I haven't done that. And I think that's a good idea to try to experiment with it to see what I would get, to see how I would do that. But that would also be doing 2 things at once, I think. It would be where when I'm working with the softener, when I'm working with the softener, I've already mixed the color. So all I'm doing is making that color softer. If I'm working with the liquid clay, I also have to be cognizant of, not that it would be, I would also have to be cognizant of, okay, I have my clay, I'm going to add some red to it. It's going to get softer, but it's also going to get redder. How am I going to, judge that? And that's a lot of trial and error. I think it would work, but I think it's going to be, like I said, a lot of trial and error. I would ask Tom, have you tried that? Have you done anything like that? And have you been successful?
I have done a little bit with trying to change colors on just regular clay, mixing it up and then mixing some liquid into it, and then mixing that, blending it, but not doing anything like what you've been doing with them. So I was just wondering if the colored polymer might work for you there. That was my only thought in it. I haven't really done too much with that. I've mixed several different colors of polymer liquid and used those to make different colors, of course, but that's about it.
So you're saying not only do you mix the liquid polymer colors with polymer clay, but liquid polymer colors with other liquid polymer colors to get that color.
Right.
And,
Right.
and do you paint with them? Do you apply them onto something, or?
I've done both. I've used them and mixed them up so that they're not just the basic colors, and in different types of molds and that sort of things, and baked that, and applied those to other things. Several of the cake pastry molds for fondant, mix up colors, different colors to go with or on top of a piece, and then apply that after it's baked.
What I found with, just as an aside, when you mix, let's say Primo with some liquid clay to thin it down, what I find is that it gets super sticky. It becomes so sticky that you can't do impasto with it because it just rolls up on your knife, and it's just too sticky. It's like sticky, like gum. It turns into bubble gum, basically. So you can't, it'd be like spreading bubble gum. That ain't happening, if that makes sense. So
it does. And I found out with the softener, I had to put in so much more softener than I thought I would have to get it to a consistency where it is spreadable. It could be better, and I'm still experimenting with it. And I can't use, I thought I was going to be able to use the translucent clay. That stays sticky. That translucent clay stays sticky.
Right.
Can't use that. At least I wasn't able to get it right.
Right. Yeah, that's what same kind of thing. Kim.
I just wanted to follow up with something you said in response to Joan's question about trying to knit some pieces together. And I'm wondering whether you'd ever contemplated or tried to sort of infill a bit, but then maybe spot cure with like a heat gun or something like that. I mean, I know there's some troubles with going too thick for something like that, and you could burn things, but I'm just wondering if you'd ever tried that or thought about it.
I never have. I think that's a great idea, but it scares the hell out of me if I have a finished piece, and then I do, maybe if I, experiment a lot, so I know exactly how far to stay away from, to cure the individual pieces in it. But, I finished a piece one time. It was a portrait. And for the life of me, I don't know what happened, because I did other portraits before this one, and I burnt this one to a crisp. And I never felt so bad. Well, I have felt so bad in my life, but it was a terrible, terrible feeling to have burnt that portrait. Ah,
We've all been there.
yeah.
Oh, oh. Well, the good thing though is I think because of the PC nature of what you do, you could probably break it back to a certain point and rebuild if you ran into problems, as opposed to trying to cure a Skinner blend, where it's like you're not patching that.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. Oh, but I have that personality where I'm like, oh, if it goes wrong, I go into my shell for a little while.
Oh no.
And it takes me a while to come back out and say, okay, I got it this time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Another question? See, it's that moment. There we go. And you're on mute.
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 The
Yeah,
damn mute button.
the damn mute button.
You know, Joseph, I love my heat gun. I love my heat gun, and she's so totally on it there. And I recommend, because I always have a recommendation. I recommend finding a super cheapo, like Hobby Lobby 50% off embossing heat gun that's like really, really weak. And just keep it moving. Just keep it moving. And it goes slowly, but you can see the change in how it's curing, and you'll be able to see what's going on.
Yes.
Play with it a little bit. Spend $15 on one. Play with it a little bit. Joseph, I swear to God, I am gonna corner you someday in the studio, and we're just gonna play all day long. And you're gonna have me making little strings, and yes, get one and play with it. You're gonna love it. And I don't know who made that recommendation, but you're totally right. He's gonna help Joseph make those connections.
Well, if I have the pieces, can I send them to you and you can finish them up for me?
Can I come visit you and we'll do it together?
Sure, you're welcome. There's an extra bedroom or two. Candace would love to meet you.
I'll get a hotel. It's all good. Excellent, excellent. And Anne makes a really good point about the clay. You can watch it curing with the heat gun.
Well, what's it do?
It changes.
It changes.
It does.
It's beautiful. It's actually fascinating. Once you start doing it, you're going to get down a rabbit hole.
Agreed.
Because it goes matte. All of a sudden it goes matte, and then it goes glossy again. It's beautiful.
Oh, and the liquid clay does that. Yeah, yeah. The liquid clay, yeah, it turns matte and cloudy, and then there's so much.
And even with your Primo, it does. I heat set my stuff before I put it in the oven. It goes matte when it goes, okay, this is my hard spot, and it goes matte, and it's fabulous to watch it happen.
This is like my mother telling me, oh, you have to get an injection. You have to get a vaccine. This won't hurt a bit.
Joseph, this won't hurt a bit. I'll walk you through the whole thing, son. It's all good.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Anne. Jenny.
I was just wondering if you've worked with Genesis paints on your clay at all.
I worked with acrylics on that one sculpture, the quill sculpture. I worked with acrylics on that. I painted those little yellow seals that the quills go into. But no, I've never worked with color on top of
we're going to have to get Anne to come over, and now Jenny will come too. Genesis. We're going to get you going on
paints.
This is sounding like a convention. I like it.
Genesis paints are polymer.
Yeah. And they're heat cured.
Yeah, the wheels are just going like in his head.
Joseph, they're a total brain F. They really are. You really.
We'll have to, see.
You have to look at Donna Greenberg's. You have to look at Donna Greenberg's work, because she uses a lot of Genesis paints.
Green Cassell.
I gotta write that down.
Yeah,
they will change your mind about paints. They will be like, okay, there's really very little difference.
And they're like blendable and layerable. Like you can layer them. That's what's really awesome.
The layer.
You layer them on top of each other.
Well, how have you used them?
I painted this little doll with them.
Not a little
Oh,
doll, that's a big doll.
how
It's my
nice.
first art doll, my first ever. But I know it might be kind of bright, but I don't know. The light's not that great. But
So that you got it really subtle. You know, the blending is real subtle.
yeah, and you can put dark where you need to put, and yeah, that's great. I mean, his hands are done with that. My lighting is terrible in here, but
I foresee a topic that someone needs to make in the community, and we can talk about it and give examples and yes.
This guy was done with Genesis.
Oh, wow. we've
Oh,
got
that's
too many-
wonderful.
See, so
Not done. Lost
Gorgeous.
their arms, but
good. All right, Judith.
Hi. I was curious when you were talking about curing the clay with the heat gun. How long do you have to keep heating it
Well, he hasn't tried it yet. That's something we're trying to get him to do.
Well, my question was really, I must confess, directed at somebody who's already done it, not,
I'll tell you what, that's another topic we can talk about in the community. How's that?
Yes.
I love it. Thank you.
And that way we can get everybody coming in and brain,
Great.
that thing we do.
The thing we do.
Yeah.
It's a rabbit hole.
Perfect.
Can you buy a holster for your heat gun? That'd be kind of cool.
Ooh, I like that.
Good. No,
they
don't
must have
laugh.
holsters because
Don't laugh.
painters use them to remove paint off of walls. They must have
Yeah.
holsters for them.
Yeah,
They must.
exactly. Sally.
I was going to ask about when you mix your clays, do you have all of your clays pre-mixed in like sheets all around you ready to go with your tearing?
Hey, take a look at this. You are absolutely right. There they all are.
Fantastic.
So that, yeah, I mix them all up and I have them laid out on my table. So I can just grab them and work. And then sometimes I will have to mix a new color. I want to mix new color, throw that in. And so it ends up being very quietly littered. And in this case, on the other side of the table, I don't know how you can see this. You can see on the other side of the table here, I have some on the back corner that I am going to use in the future. So right now, let's see, there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's at least 25 colors here that I'm using.
Good.
Yeah, so I'll mix them all first. And then if I need to get another one, it gets done.
Another question?
It's similar to how an artist works with his palette. The traditional artist has the palette in his or her left hand, and they'll have all the colors there and they'll start mixing them. And that's how I'll do it. And that's how I intend to do it even more, working with the impasto polymer.
Good idea, I think. Sherry.
So you say you're limited by the size of your oven. Are you using a home oven or a countertop oven? So what is the approximate size of the majority of your finished pieces?
14 by 16 is the largest solid one-piece size I can do.
Nice. So
Now,
how much? Go ahead.
I've made larger ones. The one I'm working on now, again, let's see if I can get it to look right here. I'll move these off. You can see how right here, that's the edge of the glass. So I'm working from here all the way up to the edge of the glass here. And then I have that more to do on another piece of glass. So I'm working my way up. The edge will be right along here.
Beautiful.
Right along there. And then I'll fit the other one down.
Beautiful.
So you have to pick when I do this, I have to pick a spot that putting the two pieces together, I feel will be as invisible as possible.
Mhm. Nice.
Very good.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Lynn,
Hi, Joe. I love your work. Just
Hi, Lynn, I
amazing.
love yours too.
Oh, thank you. I know every time you post something, I'm always looking at it really closely. Just a question. Now, when you adhere it to your foam core or your fabric, what do you use as an adhesive?
I have it right here to show you. Eileen's Jewellet. Can you see that?
really?
Too bright?
It's, yeah,
Eileen's Jewellet.
interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
I kind of look better. I'm going to leave this unfocused. I think I look better with it unfocused.
I was wondering, when I do mine, I adhere it to the cradle boards with the Sculpey oven bake adhesive. And I was wondering, I know Libby Mills, I think she does it similar the way you do, and then she adheres it to the cradle boards after it's cured. I put my cradle boards in the oven and cure them at the same time. And it cures, it's fine. So I was wondering if you thought of trying, instead of using the foam core, trying to just put some of the bakeable adhesive Sculpey on a cradle board and then re-curing it in the oven, so you'd have your base would be a cradle board as opposed to the foam core.
Ah, I see. Well, yeah, that might work after I put them together, and I could, yeah, well, I couldn't unless I have a bigger oven, because the two pieces together would be bigger than the oven I have.
Of course, if you were making a big piece, but if you were just making one small piece that was your oven size, you could re-cure it again on the cradle board. And
Gotcha.
that would be your base, yeah.
When you use the term cradle board, I'm sorry, Lynn, I'm not familiar with what that is.
They're just wooden birch panels.
Oh, okay.
And they have a vacant thing in the back, but that's what they are, birch. And they come in so many different sizes. The biggest one I can get in my oven is 16 by 20. But that's the biggest piece I can do because I work right on the cradle board itself.
And it doesn't adversely affect the wood, I guess. It doesn't get that hot.
No, exactly. And what I do is I put the wood in the oven. I mean, I always cure at 290 for an hour. So I just put the wood in the oven before I even start to work on it to season it a little bit more, because even though it's supposed to be seasoned, you'd be amazed when I open my oven door that there's moisture that comes out. And that's just my own personal feeling. I also seal it afterwards with acrylic, a couple of coats of acrylic and some of the golden veneer or varathane, only because I'm thinking if I have somebody put this in their bathroom and they have a shower every day, it's the wood going to absorb the moisture, right?
Good point.
So, and I don't know. I have no history in this to know. I've been doing this basically since COVID started. So 40 years from now, 200 years from now, I have no idea what's going to happen to this.
I think there's a lot to learn from all the way around here. There's a lot of joint experience here. Another question. Anyone else? All right. Well, then we should probably wrap it up. I normally like to end at the beginning of the hour, but hey, we had lots of good topics to discuss. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time and your attention. Thank you, Joseph. What a wonderful, wonderful world you created. So many fantastic things. Just gorgeous, gorgeous.
Well, like I said earlier, it's almost like a collaboration, and in all the exchanges I've had with people on Zoom, it really is a collaborative piece that I'm doing. I might come up with the visuals, but actually putting the piece together from everybody's ideas today. You know, I've written them down, and I'll practice and hopefully get better and put better images out all the time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you guys later.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Joe.
Bye.